for me, it's people just not assuming I'm the doctor, people being surprised to see me in a position of power. People often will have stereotypes that, you know, black people are good at certain things, and I don't think academia is one of those things that they often think about. So for me, it's often just surprised that I am who I am.
I often get things like, when is the doctor coming, or when will I see the doctor, as I'm leading the patient to the consultation room. And I think, again, the bias is the sort of typical picture of the doctor is not fulfilled in me. I'm a lady, I'm wearing hijab, I'm from a different country. So that's not the typical stereotype picture of a doctor for some of the patients.
It's the unconscious bias that we see from both colleagues and patients sometimes.
Absolutely, yes.
There was a time when I was a new registrar and I didn't know the team that I was working with all that well. And a same-sex female couple brought their baby into A&E who was admitted with very high levels of jaundice. They were really upset. And so I was welcoming them to the unit. And I was really surprised that the team around me seemed very baffled by their parenthood, by them being a couple together. In fact, one of the staff actually asked them which woman was the dad, which I thought was just, I mean, at a time where they're really stressed, when their baby's really unwell, it was just the last thing that they needed was for the team to be baffled, to be stifled. I could see them asking questions, and the team responding in a way that I could just see was related to a kind of complete lack of understanding about their association with this child, really. I think in that moment, there wasn't any kind of clinical danger to the child, but I suppose at that point I felt psychically really disturbed by watching, you know, I'm a gay woman, as watching someone from my community receive that kind of treatment, substandard care and substandard communication from not just like one member of staff, but from the team, and that just being a kind of culture in that department I found really, really difficult.
And I remember very clearly when I came to the NHS, my first week in the NHS, I met a colleague who she's left now, she's gone back to her country, and she was also wearing hijab. And she said to me, I just want to give you one advice. The fact that you wear hijab means that you don't know what you're doing until proven otherwise. And I just stopped, and I was thinking for a long time about that, and it was really sad that that was her impression, and that she felt almost we had to prove ourselves and work harder.
I can remember a time I witnessed some discrimination at work. Whilst I was a junior trainee in SHO, I was in paediatric emergency department, and there was an adolescent came in who identified as female but was assigned male at birth. And I was at the moment in a team that was really young and just kind of assumed that everyone would understand what pronouns to use. And it actually caused so much confusion and difficulty. So a lot of people were misgendering this person. There was a lot of talk between members of the staff who were feeling uncomfortable and not knowing what to say to this person. And I just found that really surprising. And I think quite a lot of the times, during the time I was in the department, this girl was misgendered quite a lot.
I always remember my first year of being a doctor. I was a paediatric doctor, and it was a busy waiting room, and I was called a racial slur by one of the patients in the room. It made me feel small. It made me feel sad. It made me feel, it made me feel unsupported by my colleagues. I told my consultant, and he made a joke out of it, and no one else said anything. If we talk a little bit about allyship, how do you define an ally?
There's a common sort of word that's used is sort of they share the same interests, allies share the same interests. And I think for me, it's my personal view is not about the interest as much as about sharing the same values or advocacy or supporting. And it's more about the human factor or the humanity around looking after that person more than thinking about shared interests. That's sort of my understanding.
And why is it so important?
I think it's important because actually within the NHS we have got people from a wealth of backgrounds who come with different privileges and different challenges. And I think it's important that when it comes to allyship, those of us that have a privilege and power use that to help others, and actually so that they feel comfortable, so that they feel heard, so they feel seen, and that's the power of allyship.
I think it can start by trying to know your team members a little better than just handing over your clinical jobs or asking how the shift was. I think it's just taking a moment to ask how they are, where they're coming from, is there anything else that's been going on? Because a lot of these overseas doctors are by themselves, away from friends and family in the UK. And I was in that position myself. It's just like taking me out for a coffee one evening in my first week. It made a big difference of how I integrated into the workplace.
It was actually my next job after my bad experience, where I went to work in a larger neonatal unit. And I had a supervisor there who knew me, who I'd met before. And one of the first things she said when I started was, "How are you? How's your partner?" And she was interested in my personal life. She was curious. And that was really reflected in the team. It was a situation where I really felt able and invited to bring all of myself to work, where people were interested in my life outside work in a way that was non-judgmental. And if there was a lack of understanding, it was met with curiosity and interest rather than kind of shut down and defensiveness. I really felt like I was fully ingrained into the team. I felt like I really trusted my team. And I think in situations where you're making decisions and you're really relying on each other, which all of healthcare is, that's integral. Integral to working together efficiently, integral to patient care.
If you ever find as a trainee that you're in a difficult situation or you're finding something uncomfortable or difficult, speak to someone about it. Find someone else in your team that you feel comfortable sharing that with. Because it might only be that one person that can then help you to then speak more largely to a group, and then you realise that potentially it isn't as scary or daunting as things might seem.
But also just, the fact that we know that often we may come across families who have a different background to us, and it can be tricky to navigate communication, and actually leaning in on the strengths of others in your team that may understand that is really important, because actually it allows you to improve your communication and the patient experience. I have a lot to learn from other people, and I also have a lot to give, and it just adds texture to my life, which is always great.
It's getting to know your colleagues, hearing about their backgrounds, and taking what you know to improve your care of and management of patients, because I think there's that shared understanding of what your patient may then be experiencing. Issues. How would you advise an ally to, stand up, speak up if they are seeing discrimination in the workplace?
I think it's important to do this in a way that you're comfortable. And there is I've heard of the 4Ds, which is, directly intervene, you can delegate that, you can delay it, so actually going back and speaking to the victim afterwards and checking that they're okay. Distract, that's it. So, perhaps make a phone call, we've all done it before, bleep someone, so to get them away from that situation. And actually that's a nice way to think about being an ally with having different strengths and from different cultural backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think it's just having that personal touch. Say, for example, I'll give an example of an educational supervisor. For example, if you have an international medical graduate, rather than in your first meeting, rather than speaking about what have you been signed off for level 3 safeguarding, you'd be like, have you rented a house? Are your kids in school? The more personal, just acknowledging that this is a person who's had a complete change, who's adapting to a new system. I'm the co-founder of Soft Landing, and this is a diverse team with representatives from most countries around the world. And I think why Soft Landing is so unique and has been so successful is because of that diversity, and because we work together for international medical graduate paediatricians, and every IMG in the UK feels they are represented in our team and can relate to a member of our team. And I think that's what makes it successful, and we've offered guidance and support to multiple IMGs.
Speak to someone, and if you're not getting the response from your seniors, there are others in your organisation that you can speak to. If you are facing discrimination, there is the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian within your organisation. You can speak to your educational supervisor, but you don't have to suffer in silence.